In this episode, we speak with Michael Feldman, co-founder and director of operations of Choice New York, a multidisciplined real estate management company offering a broad array of services, including commercial and residential property management, leasing, advisory, and project management. Michael was filled with fear and anxiety when he started Choice New York in 2009. He was inexperienced with the market he was entering, but by surrounding himself with the right people and through an insane work ethic, he built the business into an enterprise that a leading private equity firm wanted to acquire. He exited the business in 2021 and earned economic freedom and then some, although as he'll admit, it took a toll. 3 key takeaways among many others from this episode include 1. Collect talent. It's a force multiplier. 2. Execution is more important than the idea. And 3. Be passionate about being successful. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show.
RJ Lumba is the executive chairman of Market Insight Media and the managing partner of Growth Cap. He is the host of Great Entrepreneurs, a podcast for driven entrepreneurs and business owners. Our podcast covers all topics related to the entrepreneurial journey, from ideation to execution to optimization and to reaping the rewards of a well-run business. In the minutes ahead, we'll share with you unique insights and tactics from some of today's most accomplished and inspiring entrepreneurs.
Tell us a little bit about the early days after you kicked off the business and what it was like.
I try to erase them from my memory, but they were tough. You really have to have faith, so to speak, not in a religious undertone way, but just have faith in yourself. And I think I had the benefit of having my life partner, who I also view as my number one business partner, being my wife, now my wife, mother of my children. I think she had unwavering support. So that helped a lot. I think it's really tough to do that if you don't have I had a stress-free domestic life for the last 14 years, 0 stress. She saw that what I was trying to do was really hard. And so she took it upon herself to remove any and all stress, whether it's, over obligating me to social functions on the weekend, et cetera. So I think that's really important. And I think ultimately you don't have to be passionate about what you do. I'm not passionate about real estate, to be candid. I think you just have to be passionate about being successful. And then beyond the hard work is decision-making. And then as you go along, you want to just collect talent. It depends what type of business you're in, but for a professional service business, any real estate service business, I just have a whole bunch of people that are smarter than me that I try to think of as trying to add one high talent person, self-solving, proactive problem solver, self-disciplined, self-motivated individual per year, and just collect great people, because great people make everything so much easier. And in the beginning, I didn't really understand that. My biggest mistake was not spending more money sooner. But it's easy to say in hindsight because you have to live, right? So it's tough.
Would you say your key strength was in finding and retaining good people?
I would say that's one of them. I have weaknesses too, of course, but it used to be great. You try to focus on your weaknesses. Now, like all the business and consulting companies say, you actually should just ignore your weaknesses and just spend all your time when you do your best, right? So that's kind of what I try to do, is just think of it in those terms.
And so the business you'd mentioned you sold, which I actually hadn't realized, but leading up to the sale, was that a thought that you had early on, like I'm going to build this and then sell this company? Or, how did you, orchestrate the evolution of the company?
Yeah, I guess I always thought I wanted to exit at some point. I don't really love the idea of you're going to be in it forever. Your kids will take over. Who says your kids will have the acumen for it? Who says they'll want to do that? I don't want to influence they can do whatever they want. And so there's that aspect. And just, I feel like there's more to life than starting one business and running one business your whole life. So I named it, most real estate companies are named after the founder. I purposefully named it, my partner and I named it not with our names, because, it's a lot more attractive to buy a company that doesn't have somebody else's name on it. That's more generic. So I did think about that. But yeah, I I wasn't looking to exit. When I did, I thought it was a bad business decision from the outset. And I maintained all the way through the courtship and the sale process, through the consummation, and which was almost a year ago now, and to now, that it was a poor business decision. I was 42 years old. The business top line revenue grew 68%, 21 over 20 during COVID. It grew an average of 46.9% year over year, 7 years in a row on an average compounding basis. And obviously the EBITDA went up even more because you have some scalability. So it was a bad business decision. Yeah.
A bad business decision to sell?
Yeah, but a great life decision because I've secured economic security for myself and for my offspring for their entire lives. So to me, it was just almost greedy to not sell when you have that opportunity. The world's pretty volatile. And, there were other factors. Interest rates were very low. There was already a lot of money on the sideline before COVID. And then COVID there was sort of four contemporaneous crises the country experienced, being the health crisis, obviously, that led to the economic crisis, the cultural crisis, and political crisis. So I just felt like all these private equity companies put their head in the sand for 6 months. So there was just so much money out there. Interest rates were so low. Cap gains is still probably going to go up. So I just felt like if I didn't pull the lever then, I was looking at it, waiting for the next cycle. So that was part of the decision making as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting your perspective on it, because for folks that are listening and wanting to start their own business, they probably view your story as like an amazing story where you leave one company, start your own business, and then 13, 14 years later, you secure economic freedom. That is like the ideal situation for many people that are currently slaving away under a corporation. You gave one piece of advice is like you wouldn't necessarily go into it because of all the fear and anxiety, but is there another perspective, maybe a more like optimistic one that would say, here's what you should do?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a toll to pay today if you want to get to that point that people aren't aware of. At least I had to pay that toll, so to speak, without going into all the war stories. And I mean, I think the nature of my business in general was not considered lucrative. People usually, when I started, thought it was not a business you could even profit from. It was just a business that was there as an offshoot of owning real estate, essentially, but that it's not really a for-profit business. So, when you factor in, I was in New York, it's third party, so you can get terminated with or without cause with 30 days. You don't own the bricks. The age of the consumer, the age of the employee. These are multifamily, which is harder. A lot more emotion with the residents. Generally, these are small buildings, which is harder because there's a lot less scale to it. It's not really a cocktail for success. So, yeah, I don't know. I understand how it sounds to other people, I guess, but like, I don't know that it's worth it. Meaning, like, it's easy to say, but I guess for someone like me to say, but like, there's a lot of unintended consequences that come out of being in a circumstance like we're in. And then even things that are sort of nebulous, like I don't want my kids to see me not working, right? Because then they're going to learn bad habits. I've seen other people learn those habits from their parents, had a lot of success, and then they think their definition of hard work is a lot different than what my definition of hard work is. So I think there's things like that you can't account for. And then it's like, if you have a good job, you have security and you're making a good living, and there's not a lot of difference between that person and me. I mean, there's certain luxuries I get to enjoy that maybe they can only enjoy on occasion. But like, I guess the biggest difference is I don't have to work, but I don't know that that's a good thing for someone at my stage in life.
To the person that's been working at the same corporation for the last 20, 25 years and, just looking towards that retirement age, your advice would be what?
Like, you have a good life. That's a champagne problem. I mean, like Facebook, Meta, whatever they're called now. I mean, that's a high end, not just high end, but one of the most powerful companies in the history of civilization, right? Most of their executives, unless they're like really above the line C-level, make between 150 and 400, right? Maybe some make 500, the guys in my town, and they're making a good living. They get their stock, they get their bonus, they put their pool in their backyard. I mean, this is a a first world problem. And you have a lot less stress than you have as an entrepreneur where your computer doesn't work. Like, that's your problem. There's no tech company to call in the beginning, right? Like, you got to create everything. So, I mean, I see my peers being young dads and like corporate America, like the amount of fat on corporate America is really incomprehensible, right? Where like they're making in an hour what we make in a day, right? Or not even close to that. So they're making an hour what we make in a month or a year. So like, it's all political positioning to me. And they have, I'm not saying some of them don't do a good job. They do. And there's a lot of smart people, but there's also people who just play the system and, they have one or two projects and then they make their own beer and they're coaching every team and they're managing the beehive at Bloomberg or whatever. And like, it's just like, how do they have that time? Well, it's because they don't have that much work. And so that's the answer I figured out after talking to the town I live in has like a bunch of, largest corporations in the world headquartered there. And so there's a lot of executives that are in that world and they just don't have that much work compared to entrepreneurs. So I'm just not sold being on the other side of it that it's worth it because it's just, there's such a big variance between the stress level, in my opinion.
Interesting. Certainly with folks, when I was starting to go out on my own and I would tell them I'm doing this business, I'm getting going. And they would tell me like, I have no desire to start my own business. I like what I'm doing. I don't want the risk. I want to go home and be able to relax.
They may be smarter than we are. I mean, I enjoy every drop of luxury the outcome has afforded me. And it happened way before I even imagined it too. But I almost would go so far as like, there's, I understand a lot of them look at me and there's maybe some, if we're being honest, envy, but I look at them the same way. So, I don't know. There's two different roads, right? Everyone's reality is different.
Well, you're still young. So what do you do next?
I don't know. I mean, when you're running the business, people say, oh, it's your baby. It's not your baby. Your babies are your babies. But so you have to remember that. I think it does become part of your self-identity, right? Like this morning I went to get a coffee mug. I only drink out of Choice New York mugs. It's got this little icon that it's got instead of like saying I love New York, like the old I love New York signs, it says I, and then it has our icon and then NY. And I designed the mug exactly how I wanted it and all this. And we handed out 5,000 of them or whatever. And I can't drink out of another mug still. I went to the dishwasher to wash out a coffee mug, and that's pathetic. But it's how much you care about your business. And so even after I've sold it, it's part of your identity, right? So I had all these, I think you try to convince yourself like you asked me earlier how it changed me. And the answer is like, I don't even know because there's no time for your own emotions. Like emotions are just in your way, at least for me, which isn't necessarily healthy long term. And so to me, that coffee example, as pathetic as it really amazingly is, it's accurate where I think when I was selling the business, I was thinking like, I'm going to lose 40 pounds. I'm going to become this voracious, like sagely reader, and I'm going to clean the oceans. And now like a year later, I'm like, you know what? I'm actually pretty good at doing what I'm doing. And that's a lot easier. So I think I was almost like tricking myself into executing the transaction and letting go. So yeah, I mean, in terms of what's next, a lot of ideas. I don't think we have time for that today, but most of them are terrible ideas, I think. But the idea in business is actually a lot less important than the execution, right? I think most entrepreneurs would say that, where the idea to start a property management company in 2009, I wouldn't say is a great idea. I don't think anyone would say that. It might have been a decent to mediocre to good idea. Then it's just the execution, right? So I think the better your idea is, the more margin for error you have on your execution.
Did you ever think about quitting along the way, given how hard it was?
2014 or 15, we ran into a bad spot with our accounting. We had our top two accountants. One went on maternity leave and the other one went unanticipated medical leave. And right before that, we took on a whole bunch of bad business that required a lot of accounting. And then right before they left, we also decided to switch to upgrade our software. So that was a kind of a perfect storm. And the original two events I was referencing was we hired not one, but two people at a very high level that we couldn't afford to fix the problem. And we lost about $420,000 that calendar year, but partners ultimately in business. So those are a couple of the great people that I referenced that made my life work. So during that time, there were moments where I, said, gosh, I don't know if we're even sustainable. I mean, I never felt comfortable ever that I had a good business until the day after I sold. And really, even when we were making money the last few years, we started to make more and more. I mean, it took me basically 12 years to get to $1 million of EBITDA, 2 years to get from 1 to 6. So it just shows how you can snowball a business when you get spent $1 in advertising, some marketing maybe, but just to me, I put all the money into payroll and into systems, into our service, which was our product. And, that did the advertising for it.
Got it. Well, we're coming up on time here. I do like to end on a couple questions. One is, can you tell us about a book that you read that has had an impact on you, or you can simply provide a book recommendation?
Yeah, Scaling Up. It's done by an EO member. I'm a YPO member now. I'm a big believer in not advice, but peer-to-peer helping and partners. And if you have the wrong partner, just like in personal life, it's probably terrible. But I've been fortunate to have a lot of right partners, and it's just more fun to do it with other people. And so Scaling Up is a great book because it provides almost it's dense, but I'm sure other people have recommended it, but it's very system-based methodology for an entrepreneur. So we start and try to start in our meetings on time. We all have our rocks. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, some people take these books as biblical. I'm not like a true believer in any of them. Because they all have to be a little bit provocative to sell, right? So the 4-hour work week, that might work for a coding or software company. I don't think that works for a professional service business, but good for that guy. But there is something to be said. I usually try to take one thing from each book, but Scaling Up, to me, I took the most from.
Got it. And then last question is there a leader that you particularly admire? And it could be across any domain or field of expertise.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of people I admire. There are people that I know personally. There's a guy in California that gave me the idea for the business who had the same business I do, that his business is much more mom and pop still, but he came from a tough childhood and still persevered. There's a guy here I basically modeled my habits after him, my lifestyle habits, my sleep habits, my everything habits, commuting habits, how I manage my time and try to balance family, which is kind of a lot of crap in my opinion, because it's not possible to do it well. But yeah, I mean, I think if you can attach yourself, I think better than any book is if you can attach yourself to someone who's very successful and mimic their lifestyle habits. I mean, for starters, the biggest piece of advice I would say is go to bed early and wake up early. I would say you find basically zero, close to zero, virtual zero, or what a statistician would call effective zero, high income people that are consistently high income that don't go to bed early and wake up early. It's just, they all do. If you ask a bunch of people who are averaging, 2.5 million or more on their AGIs every year, they all have the same lifestyles. And so I think there's something to be said for trusting the process of what that does. That's a physiological thing, right? Your brain works better in the morning. You do the hardest thing first, the thing that's giving you, not necessarily the thing that someone else thinks is hardest, but whatever is giving you the most anxiety, do that thing first, get that done. Swallow the frog. So yeah, I think it's much better when it's rather than some random person on TV, to have someone that you can actually interact with and ask questions and get feedback from live.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate this candid conversation. I think there was a lot of realism in here, and I think there's a lot of good takeaways. You highlighted some of the really tough parts about going into business, and it's not all the rainbows and butterflies that people think it is.
Well, it is easier to be pretty candid when you're already rich. So I guess that's one advantage. One advantage that the other guys don't have is I can just call it exactly like I see it.
Yeah. So nice,
not
like
really care.
Dave
so
Chappelle type
you can have a
ending
laugh
there.
Yeah, laugh at the end, So
Awesome. Michael, thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, RJ. Be good.